negotiating terms of access. And I just wanted to touch upon that to say that what's happening right now is a discussion between our WHO colleagues and our Chinese counterparts in terms of learning about what studies have been done, what studies need to be done in that collaborative fashion. So I just wanted to touch upon that. Going to Costas's question about routes of transmission or transmission, thank you for bringing this question up. We get a lot of questions about transmission, and people focus on either droplets, or they focus on aerosols, or they focus on fecal oral, or they focus on lots of different modes. But I think what we really need to be thinking about, and Mike, you may want to touch upon this, we need to think about not only how the virus transmits in terms of whether it's these respiratory droplets or aerosols or fecal oral, but when it transmits in terms of the course of the infection from an individual and where transmission occurs. And that means the setting in which the virus has an opportunity to pass from an infected person to another individual. And that we need to take into consideration the context, the intensity of that contact, and the duration of that contact. And I think we need to start thinking of it in that way, because there are so many different ways in which we can minimize our risk and in many situations prevent transmission from moving from one infected individual to another. With regard specifically to the fecal oral, there are some studies that are looking at sampling stool in infected patients, and many of those have found RNA fragments through PCR testing, not viable virus or infectious virus, but fragments of the material, of the genetic material of the virus itself. And there are a lot of people that are looking at the possibility of a fecal oral transmission. We haven't seen that demonstrated, but it is something that scientists are looking at. But again, just to reiterate that even though we find RNA in stool samples, it doesn't mean that that is infectious, and it doesn't mean that someone can transmit between the infected stool to another individual.
Thank you very much, Dr. Van Kerkhove. Dr. Ryan's got something to add.
No, just again, back to the general message from Maria, which I think is important again. It is really important that we continue to pursue all of the knowledge regarding the various potential modes of transmission of this virus so that we can continue to adapt the various control measures. But we also always need to ask ourselves, what does this mean in our daily lives? What does this mean for our day-to-day ability to protect ourselves and protect our families? And I think within this, we need to continually reflect on the settings that we put ourselves in, the situations and the context. Danger is all about context. It's all situational. And being situationally aware, having situational awareness, where am I, what group am I in, is this a safe environment for me, for my children, for my family? Can I reduce the risk of this environment? So it's all about the setting, it is about the duration you spend in that setting, and it's about the intensity of the activities that you participate in that setting. And you get into a particular setting, a very overcrowded situation in an indoor environment, then effectively all bets are off, because so many of the modes of transmission come into play. The aerosol route, the airborne route, the fomite or contamination route. So the more close you are to other people, the more you are inside, the more the activity is intense or involves very close social contact, the more that multiple modes of transmission come into play. So in that sense, it is about you understanding your risk, it is about you managing that risk and being aware of the situation that you find yourself in personally, and reducing that risk for you, for your family, for your children, and for your community. It is important, as I've said previously, that governments communicate those risks very, very carefully, and it is also important that providers, authorities and others ensure that those environments are as safe as possible and that the risks are also managed. And we don't know what the perfect combination is of interventions, but what we do know is if individuals and communities are very aware of those risks, very aware of the virus transmission in the area, if the authorities are taking action to ensure that people are safe in schools, safe in restaurants, safe in buildings, and if all of that comes together in an organised and understandable way for communities, in the main, those countries, those areas control this virus. So it's not one thing. It's not just about the issue of masks, or it's not just about the issue of hand washing, it's not just about the issue of lockdowns or stay-at-home orders or any. It is a combination of measures in which the community, in partnership with each other and in partnership with the authorities, come to a sustainable way of controlling and suppressing the transmission of the virus and living with the virus in a way that normal human activity can resume in a successful way. I think it's very important then that science continues to further understand the dynamics of human transmission to see if any adjustments need to be made to those measures.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan. So we now have a question from Antonio from the Spanish news agency EFE. Antonio, please go ahead, unmute yourself and please go ahead.